and then he gets to the point of like being completely laid back in this like hair, and they're erupting with laughter. He's not doing anything, but he's showing them something that they've seen a million times and are always sad about,
Yeah.
but he's just made it so funny and so engaging. And yeah, I mean, again, same thing. Didn't saw that bit as a non-comic and just thought, man, that's crazy, that's hilarious, it's amazing that he can make jokes about this. And now I watch and go, he's silent.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're paying attention to him.
Exactly, and still responding and laughing. He's not saying a
they're
word.
still doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're still paying attention to him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome back. This is season 6 of Willfully Funny. This week, my guest is Mark McNally. Mark is a Toronto-based comic who runs a monthly show called the McNally Comedy Show. And I'm glad to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Simone. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we get started, can you share your social media with us?
Yes, I can. On Instagram and TikTok, as well as, well, I guess it's X now, but Twitter. I am at Duder McNarly. On Facebook, it's Mark McNally Comedy. And then I have one other Instagram page, which is McNarly Media, which is my production company.
Okay. So I will include all of Mark's social media in the show notes. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was thinking about it, and I was like, you're one of the few people that I met online and met initially during the pandemic online at a show.
Yes.
That we maintained our friendship, and we've actually met in person.
Yes, that's the key. There's a few people that I've met through Zoom shows who I've never heard from again. And you were one of the few who continued with it and started touring around and came to Toronto and seeked me out personally and said, hey, do you want to meet up when I'm in town? And I always appreciate that. And you know, I love Toronto. I love doing comedy in Toronto, but having connections outside the city and outside of, I was going to say outside the province. You're not technically not outside of the province when I think about it, but all over is always, it's one of my favorite parts of doing stand-up for sure.
Yeah, same. Because when did we meet up? I think it was last year. I think it was May of last year when I was here.
I think that makes sense.
For a week or something. The year's gone by so fast. The time has
crazy.
Just flown. It's just flown. So I guess first question would be, how long have you been doing stand-up?
It was 11 years in May. So 11, I've been doing it for 11 years now. Yes. I originally started, well, I was obsessed with comedy from a very young age. I can remember like watching Robin Williams' special from around the wall as my parents were watching it because I wasn't supposed to see it. And then in high school, I became obsessed with George Carlin. And I even saw him live, which is like one of those things that when I tell other comics, they either go like exactly what you did, oh wow, or they say fuck you, like they're mad at me for it. So for about 3 years I worked on cruise ships as a videographer, and I would talk to every comic that came on board the ships, and I would go watch their shows, and I would see who was crushing and who was absolutely dying. I remember one cruise, like nobody was going to see the shows in the big theater, so they started putting the comics in the smaller rooms. And I watched a comic who I knew from comedy at Club 54. I'd been seeing him on TV for years. I watched him bomb as hard as you can bomb, to the point where his line was comedy coming at you, like to try and get the audience back into it, like letting them know that he's saying jokes. And
oh my God. If you
And,
can't tell, that's not
oh,
good.
totally,
Oh my
totally.
goodness.
Maybe there's an issue there if you have to remind them that there's a comedy show going on. And while I was on ships, I took on an extra job of crew club president, which is the person that organizes different events for the crew to keep crew morale raised. And we do, I organized the parties, which we called discos, and if there was an offshore trip for everyone or different events. And in doing like the karaoke night and like hosting trivia and stuff like that, I got really comfortable on the mic and thought, I feel like I'm kind of ready to try stand up. So when I get home, I'm gonna try. And I think I was going to Yuck Yucks to try and get my name in the bucket, like the Toronto Yuck Yucks. I was trying to get my name in the bucket and try and get my name pulled for probably like 2 months straight. I went and I
Mm.
never got my name pulled.
Oh, okay.
And then through kind of a happenstance, there was friends of friends that ran comedy shows in and around Burlington, and I knew one of the guys fairly well, and so I kind of begged him one day, one of your next shows, can I come on? I've always wanted to try it, and so I did with the Sons of Burlington, the SOBs. I did a show in Grimsby, Ontario, at I think it was like it was called Joe Dogs, and it was the middle of their dinner rush. Nobody was there for
Oh,
comedy
yeah.
except for the other comics' friends. And I did it, and I probably ended off with one of the dirtiest jokes I've ever told. And so much so that the owner of the bar told me the next time, like, please don't finish with that joke again.
Oh my God.
But when I left, in my head, I was like, I did it. I do comedy now. Like I
Mm.
just had that. And so I did their monthly for the next couple months, and then not long after that I moved to Toronto, and I had a couple friends who were also from cruise ships who were either already in comedy or just starting themselves, and we started being the Three Stooges at like every open mic in the city, and it grew from there.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
very cool. That's very cool.
for sure.
Having worked on cruise ships and seeing uh the comedy and stuff, would you do comedy on a cruise ship? Would you go back?
I feel
Or do
like
you
there's
know too
such a
much?
no, I feel like there's such a stigma around cruise ship comics for some weird reason,
Yeah, yeah,
but
I
I
don't get
I
it.
don't understand it because if they are good, they're treated like royalty. Like Rondell Sheridan, who played the father on That's So Raven, he was on board one of the ships, and he and I really got along well, which I just lucked out, and we were on the same tour, and I was filming it, and he was just sitting I always sat at the back of the bus to stay away from all the passengers. I think he kind of did the same thing. He sat at the back of the bus, and he and I talked about filmmaking and working on That's So Raven, and spoke about Raven Simone, and him telling me that it was really hard to get directing jobs at this point because TV's completely changed, The Office changed, sitcoms, there's not sitcoms anymore, which was
Right.
his specialty. And he gave me quite a few tips, and I think the coolest part about that day was we were in New Zealand, and we were at this farm that grew kiwis, and a group of Maori children sang a song for the whole group. And at one point, he like elbows me and he goes, "I've been recognized." And I look, and at the very end, one of the little girls is not singing anymore, and she's just staring daggers into him.
Oh,
And they
daggers?
finished the song like just staring at him, like
Oh, okay.
transfixed. Excuse me, daggers is
Okay. I was
anger,
like, okay.
but staring at him. And then the song ended, and she just beelined and gave him the biggest hug.
Oh, that's so
And I
sweet.
was like, that's so cool that like she recognized him. It's hilarious that it stopped her dead in what she was doing. Something they've probably been practicing for months, and yeah, so that, I mean, again, like I said, there's, when I was on the ships that were mostly Australians, and the Australian comics came on that they knew, packed house, standing room only. People were loud. I didn't understand half the jokes because it's in that crazy Bogan language that they they speak English, but it's a different kind of English. And but you'd hear him say something, and the whole room would erupt, and I was like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" And so I've always thought there's like 3 or 4 jobs on cruise ships that are actually worth taking. Like being the captain would be fun,
Yeah.
videographer, which I was, which was great,
Yeah.
and then the entertainment staff because they don't like the entertainers because they have no responsibility to the ship. They're essentially passengers with like the VIP pass.
Right. That's true.
And so yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think I'd be very, very selective of what ships I went on and what the itinerary. For me, it'd be where are we going.
Right. Okay.
I don't think I'd want to do. There's ones that go to Alaska, and even I mean, I love the Caribbean, but I did it for so long that I was
Hmm.
like, no, we got to go somewhere new. We
Somewhere
got to,
else. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So I don't think I'm opposed to it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Because I know it, like, it looks like I've spoken to a few who've done it and they love it. And it looks fascinating to me. Like, I've only been on a cruise once, and it
yeah,
was like, I don't know, 25 years ago. I loved it. Like,
yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was fun. But the what I'm thinking about in terms of uh of doing it is, like, I don't think I have enough material.
That's
That's
yeah.
the thing. I don't think I
That
have
would be
enough
one thing for me
material.
as well. I think I would yeah, I would have to beef up the material. And
Yeah.
I think one of the nice things about it is you are going to different places, so you have the ability to get off the ship, do the things the passengers are doing, write jokes about what's happening.
Yes.
And it's very similar to like being in Toronto and doing TTC jokes. That's
Hmm.
exclusively for a Toronto. When I hear comics go to Oshawa and like immediately ask the question, "Do you guys have transit here?" I'm like, "Don't do it. Just
Yeah,
just
just
stay
don't.
away from it.
Exactly.
It's not going to translate." But if we
Hmm.
were both off in Jamaica and you start talking about the vendors who hound you right when you get off the ship, they're all like right
Yeah,
away it
because
sparks them,
everybody's had, yeah, everyone,
and they had
it,
it that day, so it's
yeah,
really fresh in their minds.
yes, yes.
And so I think there's that connection in a sense of you can connect with them in something that they did in the last 24 hours.
Right,
Um,
right. Or something that's going on the ship, or
exactly. I
yeah.
think that's a big one, especially like if there's the sea days where you're not in a port, and those can be very
Mhm.
grueling, especially on the crew and even the passengers as well, because you do get kind of like cabin fever in a
Yeah.
sense. If you start talking about that exact sensation, they'll be into it as well. So I think there's a lot of common ground that you may not have in any other situation, especially if you
Hmm.
are a traveling comic from somewhere else.
Right, right.
And but yeah, I think the material thing is a big one because especially if you're doing that theater, like the big
Yeah.
theater there, it's you're probably doing an hour and that's I mean it might be a little shorter because they got to do the intro and the outro
Right.
and but you'd have to have that much material to go through and probably have
Some clean stuff too, like
some
different.
other stuff because the same people are going to see you and I mean it's not your fault that if that's your 1 hour that's your hour and that's what you're selling and promoting, and if people
Mhm.
come see it and go, you said the same jokes, it's like,
It's
yeah, that's
like,
how this works. It's
yeah, you're still on the ship. Like,
yeah, exactly. If you read a book and read it again, the book doesn't change, dude. It's it's
yeah, you're
material. That's
yeah,
literally what it
exactly. How
is. Yeah,
you interpret it and take it in might change. Yeah.
might change. Yeah, absolutely. So
Cool. Like, do you have, like, you said you were fortunate to see George Carlin live. I'd only seen like rented like his specials on,
of
like,
course, yeah.
back in the day on VHS, go to Blockbuster or whatever video store and get it there, or some special on like cable. Um, what other are there any comics that, say, when you started, you emulated their style? Because I think we all do that when we first get started, because we have a favorite or somebody whose style and stuff we like, and then that's what you start doing, like emulating their not persona, but just their style of
Their
comedy, until
style.
you
And
find your own, until you morph into your own kind of style. Who is that for you?
I mean, George was a big one. George and Richard Pryor were like the two for me. And I don't know. I don't have the same experiences as Richard Pryor, but
Right.
I think, and when I started, I was much more cringy, and I think it's because I wanted to be dirty like them, but I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't understand that they were cursing and saying these things because it's their experience and they have jokes to it. I was just trying to be as dirty as possible,
Mm.
and I think I enjoyed the reaction of a crowd going like, "Oh," as much or more than laughter.
Okay.
And it took a few older comics who, some of them said like, "You're funny off stage. You're a very funny guy, but you're not sure what you're doing yet on stage, and you're writing. You seems like you're writing to gross people out when you should be writing for yourself and writing jokes that match you."
Hmm. That resonate
And
with you, yeah.
yeah, and I think so. I think those two. I was. I've always been a big fan of Dave Chappelle, and I was kind of coming off the years of him having just done Chappelle Show and all his success, and um, I find myself almost doing it now sometimes. Like I just watched Tom Segura's special, and it like reset a memory of one of the first specials of his that I watched. I go, that's how I want to sound, like that,
Mm.
the naturalness of his, and how it is in his own voice.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it's calculated, and so I got to watch myself when I go out after watching somebody's special, and hope that I'm not like
Yeah.
clinging onto their style in a certain sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Pryor and Carlin were kind of the big ones off the hop, and
Mhm.
I mean Bill Burr as well
I
was a
love
great
Bill
one.
Burr,
And yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Because I always thought of, and I thought of it more once, definitely once I started doing comedy, but like you, I was like a student of it. Like I loved it and I consumed it and watched it. And on top of, getting like a good laugh from, the stories and anecdotes that they're talking about, like I studied them, like I watched
hmm,
like how they moved on stage, like because everybody, all of us have like a move or so before you drop a punchline.
yeah,
Like you'll talk, and before your punchline drops, or whether it's body movement or voice or facial expression, we all do something when we drop when we drop our punchlines. And I remember like clicking into that, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 years ago, watching stuff that, oh, this guy, he comes to a dead stop before he
yeah,
says his punchline, or this one starts moving as he says his punchline, or whatever it is, hand gestures or something. And I
facial
just found that,
expression, yeah.
yeah, facial expression, like something happens, because nobody just stands there like monotone, like not ing or nothing changing.
Not anyone going anywhere, anyways.
Right. 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 Exactly. Exactly. And so
I
I always found, like, I always found that aspect fascinating. And um I remember seeing, um yeah, like Eddie Murphy, and uh
huge.
yeah, huge, like that was the thing. He was the one for me, because I was like, at the time, okay, at the time I was a teenager and he was maybe early 20s. But when you're like 14 or 15, anybody over 20 is like old. You know what I
He was
mean?
20. He
He
was
was
22
22.
when he put out
22.
Was it Delirious? Yeah.
Delirious, yeah.
And it like to this day still one of the funniest specials of
Oh
all time.
my God.
And
Oh my God. Yeah.
it's
He
crazy,
was
especially like
22.
11 years in, and I still go like,
Yeah. Yeah. Same,
and this
same.
much older than him too now. Like I go just like
Exactly.
insane,
It's
insane.
true. It's
So
insane. It's insane
well,
because I started way after 22.
yeah,
And,
same.
it just the fact that he had, yeah, the timing and the just that like that's God-given talent
Without question.
without question. And to be able to hone it in and everything. But then when you watch Richard Pryor and you watch any other, he's Richard Pryor and George Carlin are like the blueprints of every single comic
I think
on
so too. Yeah.
because I think like they changed it because I remember watching a biography about George Carlin, and he was like straight laced, like tie, you know, take my wife, please. Like, I flew from Cleveland and boy are my arms, like that kind of,
Yeah.
did that kind of comedy, like in like up until I think the late 60s.
He wanted
And
to be a movie star.
mm,
He saw comedy. Well, originally he started as a radio broadcaster, and he saw uh, that leading to acting, or that leading to comedy, and then comedy leading into acting.
mm,
And he always talked about how his dream was to be Danny Kaye, and so all his stuff was very goofy. Like he was, that's why one of his albums was called Class Clown, because
mm,
that's what he was growing up, was the class clown, and making funny faces and making the other kids laugh and disrupting the class was so
yeah.
important to him. But he had this like straight lace mainstream,
Yes, what I was looking,
yeah,
mainstream, straight lace. Yes.
mainstream sort of dream, because if he wasn't going to get into business, his mother was like, okay, you got to have the straight lace dream of comedy and fame. And I think acid changed that up for him a little bit,
As it would.
as it would. But he always talks about how there was that push and pull where he was a rebellious kid. He had been, he'd been kicked out of the army, he had been kicked out of school, but he had this very mainstream dream. And then I think it was twofold. I think it was Lenny Bruce
I was about to say
changing
Lenny
how
Bruce.
comedy is performed and going more into personal and more into political, and the way we talk and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure it's like a lot of people who see a comic that inspires them, they go, oh, you can do it like that, like you can just talk about how
Yeah.
crazy your parents, you know what I mean, like there's something that clicks with a comic. So I think that's what happened with George. And then he had this whole revolution where he went from the clean cut guy with the suit to all of a sudden the guy with the
Yeah.
beard and the long hair and the
Yeah.
jean jacket, the hippy dippy weatherman. And he said I read his book. I've read it a couple times actually, and he talks about how he was in his 30s, and his previous audience had been the parents in their 40s, and he realized he had more in common with the kids who were in their 20s.
Yeah.
And uh the one album he did, AM and FM, that was meant to be, AM is the clean cut, like I have this half of material that I'm not just going to get rid of, but
Hmm.
then I'm doing all this new stuff that I'm proud of and I'm excited about. And that's what that album is. It's half and half almost, of
Right.
like literally a person's personality on stage changing, which
Yeah.
is
Which is
which is
growth.
daring.
Yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
yeah, it's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So it's like I credit those three, especially Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, and Richard Pryor, with just talk, like you said, just talking about life,
Totally.
whether it's politics or your own life or just stuff what's going on. And I remember, um, I don't know if it's Live on the Sunset Strip, um, but there's a special where Richard Pryor talks about when he had his crack habit. And remember, he lit himself, almost
Yep.
nearly killed himself. And I remember watching it maybe in the like in the 80-ish
Yeah.
when it came out, and feeling some way about it. But then I watched it again, like as a comic, like once I started doing comedy, and it was like I can't even describe the feeling, because I'd seen it before. It's not like I hadn't seen it ever, but it just resonated with me, not so much the subject matter, but just how he, like, just the art of taking something
So dark.
tragic and
Yeah.
so dark, sad,
Yeah.
and making, like, and telling it in a way that's honest, brutal, and people are killing themselves laughing,
Kill themselves laughing. I
you
think one of
know?
the most amazing things in that special, that again, same thing. When I saw it as a non-comic, I was amazed by it. But when I
Hmm.
watched it as a comic, um, he did his characters. He did Mudbone. He did all these different characters,
Yes.
and he did one which the name escapes me, but it was a junkie. And there's one part in that bit where he doesn't say a thing. And he's literally just doing the junkie actions of like falling back, and you can hear the audience kind of wanting to like disrupt because it's silent. It's the first
Hmm.
time he's been completely quiet, but suddenly like one person makes a noise and you can almost hear like the shh,
Yeah, like,
like
yeah.
people like telling him shut the fuck up. And then he gets to the point of like being completely laid back in this like hair, and they're erupting with laughter. He's not doing anything, but he's showing them something that they've seen a million times and are always sad about,
Yeah.
but he's just made it so funny and
Hmm.
so engaging. and and yeah, I mean, again, same thing. Didn't saw that bit as a non-comic and just thought, man, that's crazy, that's hilarious, it's
Yeah.
amazing that he can make jokes about this.
Hmm.
And now I watch and go, he's silent,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they're
That's the
paying attention to him.
exactly, and still responding and laughing, and he's
Still,
not
yeah,
saying a
they're still
word.
doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're still paying attention to him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
unbelievable.
I say most of the time, or a lot of the time, most of the time, we respect the the audience.
Yeah.
They've come,
Yeah.
they've taken their time, their money, whatever, their attention, and they're bringing it to us, sort of thing.
Eight.
So yeah, exactly. So like I appreciate that, like 1,000%. I
Totally.
think sometimes we underestimate what they'll get and what they don't get.
Yeah.
Um, because I know I've been surprised a few times that it's like, say like testing out a joke or something. Um, just by nature, I'm very detailed, so I feel like I got to put all these details in so I can set the scene and set the stage so everyone knows what I'm talking about. That's me, like, normally,
Yeah.
like on a normal thing. And I know at comedy you've got to cut the fat, but I still, I don't know, especially when I'm testing a joke. And the thing is, this is, I don't know why I keep testing this, because it's proven to me regularly that I don't need that much.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I don't need that much.
In the sense of what you're saying, I think you and I have a very familiar style
Hmm.
where we'll set up something and I've had to work on being comfortable with them being silent as I'm setting up what I'm going to
Yes,
get into.
same.
And I there's part of me that goes, you need more punches, you need something funny in there, you need to cut the tension, you need to da 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 da. But it's always worked, or most of the time it's worked. And even when I've done, like, I really enjoy doing theme storytelling shows and doing what Pryor was doing there, digging a little deeper and going, all right, I'm going to say something really personal on stage tonight, and if I completely bomb, I can accept it because I'm only going to tell this once.
Right.
And uh, it's more about, in those cases, the story than being funny. I've worked on that a bit. I've learned ways of just, one, you splice in as much of your written material as you can, and two, you know, I I like to have a bit of prep with those because I'll tell it I'll try and do 2 or 3 open mics with that material. Just, you know, say it out the first time, it's terrible. No one's laughing. It's other comics just playing on their phone, but you get a couple titters here and there, so there's
You're on track.
something
Yeah.
in there, and you're trying new stuff out. So the stuff that comes out that you didn't think of or write down before, suddenly that gets a laugh, and you're like,
Yeah.
it was spontaneous, but it
Yeah.
worked. And then the next time it's a little more refined, it's chopped down, and comics are saying to you that new bit is good,
Yeah.
and you got to tell them it's for a storyteller show. I'm probably never going to tell it again. And if I can get that third one in, by the time I get that third one, I'm like, all right, we can do this. And I've had a few times where it may not be necessarily an audience member, but I did one show where I told a story, and it was really, really like a personal, deep story. And the bartenders all said to me afterwards, like, man, you were the best one tonight. You actually told a very personal, very oh, I don't want to say intimate. I can't think of the word that I'm thinking of, like but like deep, like
Yeah.
you
Vulnerable.
told
You were vulnerable. Yeah.
vulnerable. That's the word,
Yeah.
exact word, Simone. Thank you. You told something very vulnerable, and everybody else was just up there telling their gross out story or telling their ridiculousness, and you hit the ridiculousness and the funniness, but with the vulnerability and um intimacy, and just really went deep on there. And so even if that show didn't go well, one person saying to you like, I really like that story, or that you
Yeah.
did a really good job with that story, really, it resonates for sure.
For sure. For sure. For sure. Yeah. I have that a similar experience, like when I'm trying out new things. And like actually this week I tried a new thing that I wrote it very quickly. um and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try it. This. And
Yeah.
so the first time I did, like, it overall it went well. And then I was like, okay, there's a part which was like the like towards the ending that I felt was like too clunky.
Hmm.
And I was like, I need to like just narrow that one, like declunkify it somehow. But I was like, well, how do I do it without losing the whole whatever? And so I remember just working on it, like saying it out loud and repeating it. And then I tried it again. I think it was the following night at another show, and it worked. It worked beautifully.
Yeah.
It worked beautifully, and I just simplified it. Instead of like having two sentences to like sum up the joke, it was like a couple of words.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
think
it was.
that's where the prep comes in, is getting thrown onto those shows last minute is tough. I've had that a couple times.
Mhm.
I think if you do well, it's out of the fear. It's you're just going as hard as you can, and they can tell that you're like putting all your energy into it, and they might not feel the terror that's inside of you, but they can tell that there's real emotion coming out in that story.
Mhm.
But like I said, getting the little bit of practice in, getting the opportunity, like I in February of 2020, right before all this stuff happened,
Mhm.
COVID, I went, I it was the leap year, and I had made the decision to try and do 30 sets in 29 days.
Wow.
And I was exhausted for sure.
Oh God,
But
yes.
the the first 2 weeks, I had this story. When I was a kid, my parents were big drinkers and big partiers, and we went to a restaurant, and they were essentially, every time you bought a specific kind of beer, you get a scratch ticket, and you could win shirts and hats and everything like that. And then you could fill out the back and have a chance of winning a trip to the Miami Homestead Grand Prix, which is a car race in Miami. My family wasn't into it at all, but my parents combined drank 16 beers. And
Wow.
so we ended up winning because we had the most tickets in the thing. And so I was telling the story of, the ridiculous of getting the trip and all the weird things that happened while we were on the trip. And I was hitting these mics and doing different shows every night. And a comic named Moise Iranzi III he was hustling us even harder than I was, I think. And about the third show that he heard me tell that story, he goes, "That story you're telling, I'm thinking he's going to just destroy me on it."
Yeah.
And he goes, "It's getting good, man. You're working it." And I was
Oh,
like, "Thanks, man. That means
that's
a lot."
high praise. That's yeah.
Huge praise for sure, especially one that long where I'm doing these 5-minute sets trying to tell a 7 to 10 minute story. And I think that's where a lot of the laughs came because I was just bam, bam. Like you have
Yeah.
to have your punches really quickly and you have to
Yeah,
tell
for a set that short. Yeah.
for a set that short. And I think the hardest part about that story is there's no ultimate close, or at least the part that I thought was like the funniest part and would be the big punchline just wasn't working the way like the whole beginning was working. Like I kind of lost people at the end of it.
Oh,
They
okay.
might have been appreciative that I just told this big story, and especially when I got, a 10-minute set and got to stretch my legs on it, it kind of just petered out at the end.
Oh.
And of course, after that month, we only had about 11 days of doing comedy before everything shut down.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
haven't really touched that material since. And it's always been kind of a weird sticking point of like, I want to get back to telling that story because that'll add to my 40 minutes to an hour that we were
Right.
talking about before. But and a big part of it was I want it to be completely honest. Like I didn't really want to fabricate too much. I think
Mhm.
now I realize I got to make up an ending that's funny and just
Yeah, and
that,
that and to be okay with that, because
to be
I
okay
struggle
with
with
it,
that.
and
Yeah.
at least design it so it's reflective of the story I just told,
Yes, that it's based in reality. Yes.
based in reality.
Yeah.
But even if it's not exactly what happened at the end of the trip or whatever,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, it's a difficult thing, and like I said, Moe's giving me that like props was hugely helpful because that was
Hmm.
that was my goal, especially for the first part of the month. I want to perfect this bit,
Yeah.
and that was it was two things. I wanted to perfect that bit, and I wanted to get on stage and feel as comfortable as possible to where I don't even need material. I know I'm going to keep their attention this whole way through. And by like the last 3 4 shows of that month, and specifically there was a show I was hosting, I felt on fire. Like I felt
Yeah.
like I was just destroying as hard as I could, and keeping the energy, specifically keeping the energy of that show up, so every comic that got up was riding like a decent wave of laughs.
Yes.
They weren't
Yes.
coming in completely cold, which can happen when you're a host. I love hosting because you do get the opportunity to tag off of somebody's last joke, or
Hmm.
if you have something that's there, or they're talking about something in the news and you can piece off that. Or so yeah, I it's such a challenging thing, especially the storytelling and
Yeah.
just in general, because so many people have completely incoherent sets where they're just trying 3 or 4 different things, and they, especially when you're in a hot writing phase, nothing's connected, but you're just trying to see if
Yeah.
these
If you
cool
see
things I
if they
wrote today
work.
worked. And
Exactly.
and then you were talking about the news story. uh I had I was in a relationship at the end of that last year. It ended right at the beginning of this year, and I was horrified at the idea of trying to joke about it,
Mm.
but because of who and what we are, I had to eventually.
Yeah. Because it's
And
part of healing too. I think it's
oh,
something we
totally.
all do, that's how we process things,
That's
to
how we process things, and
process sadness, trauma. Yeah.
totally. And holding back from doing it, I think, was holding me back from getting over it. And so I tried just an idea of a bit about our relationship. And that first night, it did better than any other like worked on bit that I had. And it's one of the few times where I tried something for the first time and posted it. And I think more than anything, in part, that was me saying like, "Hey, I'm not with this person anymore, so stop asking me about her.
Yeah,
Stop asking
exactly.
about this relationship." But it was very cathartic. I actually put it out on my birthday and was kind of like, "All right, this is it, no one's going to be mean to me today. Let's put it out today and see how it goes." And again, it got a really good response, and I've worked on the bit since and been pretty consistent at telling it. And I had to stop myself from digging deeper into other things that I could kind of whatever make fun of them about, however you want to look at it, because then it got me thinking about the relationship again, and it would get me in
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of a dark place. And so I
yeah.
was like, all right, the bit's done now. We're not going to change anything, we're not going to add anything. You need to see this as a bit, no longer as a story that's in your life. It's now
Yeah,
your material. It's not this thing that you've been miserable about for the past couple weeks. And so
yeah, yeah.
it's yeah, it like you said, it's very cathartic and very, very helpful in a lot of ways, for
Oh, for
sure.
sure. Like I can relate. What I'm curious to know if you do the same. Like I'd say I've done it. I've been doing it for, I'd say, maybe the last year, where I would have something that I wrote, say, when I first got started, that at the time when I wrote it and performed it, I knew I could do more with it. I knew there was more to it, but I didn't have the experience or the skill yet to make more of it. But then I can go back. I've gone back and brought back some stuff and like revamped it, just because, I have more experience and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And it's like I've combined a few, like, say, some shorter
totally.
bits on the same subject, and like combine them and came up with something, same theme but different, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Is that something that you do as well?
I, I don't remember any of this. I barely remember any of the stuff that I started with 11 years
Okay.
ago. And as I said, there's so much of it that I just somebody has footage of my first set, and I am horrified at the idea of watching it because I don't want to see what that terrible person was talking about on a stage when somebody gave him a microphone. But the combination and the matching essences of bits and jokes. And as I even said, when I do the storytelling stuff, I try and pull from my own bits just so I can plop them in there and get the laughs. I like to combine sometimes. Yeah, I like to, and that the story I talked about earlier, I'd love to revamp that one and get that going again and work on that.
Yeah.
And because it's such a visual bit too, like it's one of those where I could tell the story and then maybe one day have somebody animate what I'm talking about
Oh,
and just
yes.
have the exaggeration of that. But yeah, I think I'm more about the like, oh, that line that remember saying years ago, I can pull that into this, or but I again, there's a lot of bits from my past that they are they're in a coffin for a very good reason.
Do you have a process with like writing jokes, or like,
um,
do you sit down and say, okay, every day I'm going to sit down for an hour and write jokes, or do
God,
you
I
have
wish. I I'm neurodivergent. I have ADD, and I find that what I do is there'll be an inkling of a joke or an idea. I mean, sometimes it's a story that happens, and I'm like, that's there, like that's the bit. But a lot of times it's an inkling of an idea, and I spend most of the day, no matter what I'm doing, obsessing about what that is, what the words are, and then right before I'm going to go try it for the first time, I'll write out bullet points And I think the biggest part of my writing process is recording my sets, because I try and record and then watch them as soon as possible afterwards, or listen to them as soon as
Yeah,
possible
that's what I
afterwards.
do too.
And from there, I might do a more comprehensive kind of note point write out. And some I have a couple notebooks where like I'll write out full ideas and try and do them long form and go through them. And but I find my write out is never the same as my actual speak out, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I
And
understand it
so
completely.
it's a process of just, I'd almost call it like just puking it out onto a
Yeah,
page,
yeah,
trying to say that to myself and figure it out in my head, and then getting up on stage, fumbling through it and see what's working when I'm fumbling. And then this many years in, I know what my humor is at this point. So I know that something's gonna work in some sort of sense.
yes,
But
yes.
formal, like in studying Carlin, he talked about writing out full ideas and then having file, because it used to be physical files, and then he said once you got to a computer and word processors, it was literally doing different files, whereas politics, religion,
Yeah,
words, language,
yeah,
and then knocking them down even more inside of there. I tried to do that, but again, the circus in my brain just doesn't compute that. So it's a weird process, but it seems to work for me. But as I
yeah.
said, I find a lot of stuff, the idea is almost fully there. It's just kind of putting in, I think, and that's a lot of like some of the best art and like songs and stuff like that. I've heard the same thing. Like I watched an interview with Coolio talking about, he's like, I wrote Gangster's Paradise in like
Mm,
1 second. He goes, actually, I didn't write it, it wrote me. I just
right.
sat there and was the vessel that wrote it out.
Yeah,
And then I got in front of it, I'd heard the beat, and he got in front of the mic and then just did it word for word as you hear it now. And I think with a lot of my bits that have worked the best, a lot of it's from like a spark, like just an initial,
yeah.
oh, that's
Something.
funny.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And even like, with doing working in film, and my ultimate goal is to write and direct my own films. A lot of the films, they're fully formed in my head when I come up with the idea. I mean, obviously there's a lot more details to go in, but the general idea of what it's about, what I'm trying to say with it, and the overall story is kind of just already all there. I wish that there was a way to just put something to your brain and the whole thing would end up on the screen,
yes.
like it like me AI in a certain sense. Like it'd be phenomenal. I feel like I'd be so many more
Oh,
so
for
many more
sure. I
steps
wish,
ahead.
because
But
there's something in Harry Potter. I can't remember what the thing was called, but that they could just take their thoughts and like put it in a bowl and like watch them and go, oh, and
yeah,
pull
yeah,
this out and
yeah,
use that. Yeah,
that'd be
I
great.
wish for that all the time.
I've been looking for a magic wand for many, many years now, and they're not selling them, I guess.
I
So
know, I know. Because I think maybe only, yeah, I think there may be like 3 bits that came to me. I did them right away and they worked just like that. Very,
and
very few.
it feels so weird when that happens.
Yeah, because it's like,
Yeah,
but it's happened very few times,
yeah.
because usually if by the time, like when I think of something like an idea and everything, sometimes it could be months before I approach it again to work on it. Other times it comes very quickly and I may take it to the stage relatively quickly, but I'm working on it for weeks, or you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's there, it's getting reaction. There's still work to be done, and I'm going to
Still work
keep
to be
doing
done,
it until I get it. Yeah, so it varies. It varies,
for sure.
but yeah, I wish it was like ding, take it to the stage. It's perfect. Oh my
Yeah, and maybe I
God.
oversell sometimes when I think that, but there are some where the idea comes in my head. I have to say this tonight. I have
Yeah,
to try this
yes,
tonight. So
yes.
that's a fun feeling.
Yeah. Or you're
You know,
excited to do it, yes.
especially when you're at work and it happens and you're like, oh, I just need to get out of here. I need
I
to
just
be
need to
on
find
another.
a stage.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, one that I've the one I was telling you about that I tried a few times this week was exactly that. Like I thought it up and I was like, I can't wait. Next
No.
time I'm on stage, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Sort of thing.
What
It's like,
consequences? Let's go.
yeah, exactly. It was like, I'm just gonna do it. Let's see,
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's cool. Because I find that there aren't um at least my own experience is that I haven't had the opportunity to say, okay, I've got a 6 minute set coming up. I'm gonna just do new stuff. That
It's daring. I
yeah,
I
I think it's, yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
really it's why I like open mics,
Yes.
is because you can have the thought in your head of not that it means nothing, but this only means something to me.
Right.
And
Right.
there's not money on the line,
Yeah.
there's not completely
There's low
alienating yourself
stakes.
from an
Yes.
audience. There's no stakes,
Yeah.
exactly. And um so yeah, I think with most bits, the newer ones, I want to try and like I said, I feel like I won't say it's the magic number, but 3 times getting it out there in an open mic setting or a very open set sort of feeling. Like
Mm.
there's some open mics that have good audience there, and those are
Yes.
the best ones to get to.
Yes.
Um, but if you're going to be saying it in the basement of a bar where it's other comics just playing on their phone, I need like 3 of those to where I can judge, like, all right, they're looking up from their phones. This feels good enough to do somewhere important.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it can, like, it's almost like you've made the roster in a certain sense. Like
Yes.
you've made it in with the top dogs. Now yeah, so
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because I know what I usually do is I would like sandwich it in between
yeah, the
something.
placement
Yeah.
of a new bit is super
Oh
important.
yeah. Like I would never just start with it because it's like, but
You got to feel really, really good about that bit to say it
yeah, I'm
first
starting with
up.
this.
Starting with it. You got to feel like you're invincible with
Yeah.
that bit to
Oh
start with
yeah.
that. And if
It's
that
true.
goes the wrong way,
Yeah, that's the thing. You'll spend the rest of the minutes, however many minutes left you have of your set,
I do
trying
I
to get
do
them
like
back.
I do kind of like that feeling though, where you not lose them up front, but maybe don't have them locked in at the front, and you recognize it. And it's like, I got to get them back.
Yes.
I
Yes.
do like that challenge, and even that's why I'm a big proponent of taking the bullet and going first. I will gauge what the host is doing, and if they've got the room up and interested, then great.
Yeah.
But then I like a little bit to have the pressure on myself of getting up there and going like, he may not have started the show, but I'm going to start this show.
Yeah,
You know what
you
I mean?
set the pace. Yes, you're
Yeah.
setting the pace. Yeah.
And so I enjoy that quite a bit. And I
Mhm.
when new comics ask me advice, it's one of the first thing I say: don't fear the bullet.
Yeah.
Just if you can take it, take it, because
Yes.
it's super important to get comfortable there,
Yeah.
because it you're
Because you're
strengthening
going to
that
be
muscle. Yeah.
exactly, and you're going to be in situations. that like emulate the bullet, the bullet
Totally.
thing. Like if you have to go up after somebody who did badly,
Totally.
or you're in a situation where uh the crowd's not responding to anybody for whatever reason. Like you're in bullet situations with you could be in bullet situations without being the
Without being
first one
first.
out there,
Absolutely.
so I think I agree with you. It's a good skill to have. And I know when I like early on I was terrified of going first. And um depending on the show, like say if it's more of a like a like a because like say in a comedy club setting, bullet is usually the opener,
Yes. Yes.
which is you're a professional comedian and you're starting off the show.
Super important. Yeah.
It's an important position, so to speak.
Definitely.
And
And the headliner's counting on you. Like every,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
it's a because you're setting the pace of the show. Like the MC, even though they're the first person that the audience sees, and is their job is to like hype up the crowd and keep the crowd engaged, every performer coming out has a
Still
job
has
to
it.
maintain that,
Totally. 100%.
to so that it's like up here by the time the headliner comes out.
When I first started feeling like I'm getting decent at this, I did this terrible open mic where they didn't stop people from playing pool, and the pool table was
Oh,
literally
those are the
next to the
worst.
stage. Literally next to the stage. Most people are
That's
just sitting at the
awful.
bar. It's on a Sunday night. It's essentially it's not an empty bar because it has such regulars that like live there. They've been listening to the same jokes from us for 20 years at this point. They have no interest in it. And the first or second comic went up, and I guess his buddy from film school was making a documentary about stand up, and so he's getting filmed the first comic, and so no one cares. Like they almost want like we're gonna make sure your documentaries.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna fuck this up for you.
And so I'm watching and I'm going like, all right, I feel like I have to turn this around. For whatever reason that night I was like, I feel like I have to turn this around. And so the audience members that were paying attention that had been talked to, I was like, all right, they're from Scarborough. I'm going to talk about that. I was like, these guys playing pool are on the chopping block as soon as they get on this stage. And I went up and right away I just said it. I was like, these guys here, give it up for my man here playing pool. They are playing while I'm chasing my dream, man. They don't give a fuck what I'm doing right now. They don't care that these balls cracking together is ruining what I'm my dream. And so all of a sudden they now have their poles in their hand and they're paying attention. And then I start going at the Scarborough people who are now like, if they were into it before, they're fully engaged.
Yeah.
They're loving it. And then I'm into one of my bits and just something comes over me. I go, it's quiet. I go, I got their attention. Okay.
They're
And I just
listening.
finished my set and came off to like full blown applause. And the comic that was after me literally like grabbed my hand like this and was like, thank you. I was like, someone had to do it, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not even how I felt. Like somebody's got to do it. I was
I'm the
like,
hero you needed.
yeah, I was treating myself like Batman, even though that's not how I felt inside. I was going like, holy shit, that worked. I can't believe that fucking worked. I can't believe that I just did that. I didn't know I could do that. And then once I did it once, I was like, all right, I gotta keep an eye for that. And one, try it again because it felt great when it
Yeah.
worked. And two, it's like I now know how to. That's now a tool. It's now
Yes,
a
yes.
way of doing it, and it's a big thing I tell. Like I just did a trip to Uxbridge, and I started out my set by saying it's really nice to be in Ontario's biggest Mennonite furniture showroom. This is really nice, and so I was mentioning something about their town, and it got them laughing, and I think it's really important if you're doing a show and you're traveling somewhere, same as the cruise ship thing, taking something that they're familiar with and making a joke of it or making fun of it and just letting them know, like, I know who you people are.
Yeah,
And you may not know me, but we're going to know each other by the end of this. And I want you to know that I know you, even if you don't
yes.
know me. And this, so
Yeah, that's
it's one of the
important.
funnest parts of it, I find.
Oh yeah.
Wikipediaing some little town in Ontario and going, what are they known for? What
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the big one
What's
for
their
me is
thing?
totally the big one for me is what movies were shot here.
Oh
Because
yeah.
because one, I might know people that worked on it and might know
Yes,
something that they don't know about it. And two, uh, you gotta make that connect. I just find that so important to make the connection with the audience,
for
whether
sure.
it is you're talking about something that they're into or something that they might be familiar with, for sure.
Oh, for sure. Because I know just as like as a consumer of it, like or like going to a show when a comic from out of town or out of another city or another country comes in and makes reference to something in your city. Oh, it's like you go
People
crazy.
are
Like I
saying,
remember seeing Jeff Foxworthy,
"Yep,
and this was in Montreal, like maybe in the 90s. I went to it was probably just for laughs, like a gala that he was headlining, and is his whole thing like the redneck, you may be a redneck sort of thing, that he's like world famous for. And so he started like was doing that, and he stopped.
$100 million band."
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And he stopped and he looked at the audience. He's like, "You guys have rednecks too. I know, Point St. Charles and St. Henry," and
There you
the
go.
crowd went mental,
Exactly, exactly.
mental, mental.
Or
Because yeah,
yeah, naming the rival city, huge,
yes, yes,
huge.
yes, yes,
One of my favorite things
exactly.
when I do Hamilton is
Mm.
just knocking all the little towns around Hamilton, and then even making fun of Toronto, which makes them love you so much
Yes,
more.
yes, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
mentioning Whitby in negative when you're in Oshawa, that's a great one.
It's true. It's true because it feels like I don't know. It's I find it's a sign of respect.
Totally,
You know,
100%.
one of the very first comedy show I went to when I moved to Ottawa. I moved here in February 2019,
Yeah,
and I hadn't started comedy yet. I was a few months away from starting comedy. Actually, this going to this show like reignited the I want to do this sort of
yeah.
thing. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any people. So I was like, I was always looking like on Eventbrite for things to do. And I saw that Eliza
Especially,
Schlesinger
yes,
was playing at the NAC. And I loved her. I've seen all her specials. And I
yeah,
was like, oh, I'm going, I'm going, I'm going. So I got a ticket. And I remember I was in the front row on the aisle. And so she came out, she was fantastic. And at the beginning, she talked about um, that she was walking around Ottawa.
mhm,
And I was still fairly new to Ottawa. I didn't know Ottawa very well myself. And so she was talking about Ottawa and the things she saw and the people and relating it to, where she lives and stuff like that. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. Like, that's amazing. Like, I love it when comics do that,
totally.
because it showed that she did some kind of research on where she
Yep,
was playing, whether
100%.
she read the newspaper. In this case, she ventured out and walked
Yep,
around and went into stores and talked to people and stuff like that. I love that. I
yeah.
love that.
Well, there's I'm a big pro wrestling fan, in case you couldn't tell by all the behind me. But I went to a wrestling show in Kitchener a few months back, and one of the guys came out and was like, "I was just backstage eating a poutine," and like you would have thought that he said Kitchener was the greatest place on earth, kind of thing. Like they lost their minds, and that's not even like a dish from Kitchener. You know what I
It's
mean?
just
Like
Canadian. Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
literally Canadian, so it got like the biggest pop of the night, and yeah, and the thing you were saying about the commonality, that was a big thing that I had to learn when I was getting out of this, like, be a gross comic kind of deal, was writing for me, but writing stuff that people are familiar with. And I do a lot of jokes about working in film, but I slowly realized I'm not talking about specifically working in film. I'm talking about any blue collar job where you're working with these same guys.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I do a lot of big thing about nicknames and the guys you work with and how they have nicknames. And I usually started off with the kind of guys that think jalapeno poppers are a breakfast food. And like we've all worked with these crazy sketchy people, and that's like, especially the nicknames, that gets people fully engaged, because everybody's had a job where you've worked with a bunch of guys who you don't know any of their real names, and you just know them
Because you
as
only
these
know their nicknames.
characters. You just know characters,
Yes.
basically. And in saying a lot of these nicknames, it gives you a full, like, I say I work with a guy named Hillbilly Steve. Picture a man named Hillbilly Steve, and you've got it. That's exactly what that dude looks like. You can say two words and people have a full picture of somebody.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that that's like a big part of it, for sure.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's amazing. And it's like what you said was bang on, that even though you're talking about your own experience in like a specific industry, specific situation,
Totally.
it's the experience that's common, not the location or the type of. It's not like, okay, you're talking about a job in film or something that resonates with people. It's the experience, like you were saying, that it's like
Exactly. The
you talk
commonality of,
about this, the commonality, and everyone in the room is like, yeah, they're
yep,
thinking of their own experience like
totally.
that. And
Totally.
I love that. I love that too, because I get the same feeling, because I talk a lot about um just relationships,
Yeah,
and like the stuff that I've experienced in relationships, like just relating to whether it's I talk mostly about like romantic dating relationships, but it's also, say, like parental dynamics with your friends, things like that. So even though I may be talking about a specific situation with X, with this past boyfriend or
totally.
this friend or my mother or something, everyone has a similar experience. Everyone
Totally
has
get it.
been in that situation, or or a variation of that situation,
That's the best way to go for jokes, is where you can, like, Carlin talked about that as well. He said, like, I like using words that I don't have to explain what they mean. Like, he goes,
Yes.
if I say detention, every single person in the room knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's no question of what detention means.
Yes.
They know what the topic is, and the importance of, like, hitting them with something that they're going to recognize, but then taking your take on
Yes.
that situation,
Yes.
and showing it
Yes.
from like a different angle, or from your
Right.
perspective.
Exactly. And that's also where you can get the redirect, because they've locked into, oh yeah, I know what
Totally.
this is, and they think it's going to go this way, and then
One way.
because
Yep.
maybe in real life it did go this way, or just that's the journey you're taking them on,
100%.
with the, yeah,
100%.
you think it's going this way, but it's, I'm going this way
That's a
instead,
great one. Yeah.
yeah. So that's yeah, that's the magic of it. I love stand up so much. I
Same.
just love it. So would you like to play a little game it's called Crazy Questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I have 249 questions here. We're not going to do all 249.
I was gonna say, we're gonna go over the
Yeah,
90 minutes you said, but
exactly. It'll be like seven
okay,
7 hours later,
be a long podcast.
So we'll probably maybe do two or three of these
Perfect.
questions. So if you could pick a number between 1 and 249, and I'll read the corresponding question.
Okay, my favorite number is 91, so let's go 91.
91. Okay. Okay. I don't think this question has ever been asked, but would you
Nice.
rather be forced to dance every time you heard music, or forced to sing along to any song you heard?
I mean, the second one I already do. If you play, like, I can't Like, even just what I'm gonna say right now is gonna trigger the song in my head, and it's been the worst because the movie just came out. If I hear like a note of Barbie Girl that's stuck in my head, and may not be singing it out loud, but it's stuck. And again, with my ADD, I find that I'll turn off a song when I'm in my car, and then the rest of the day I'm starting the song from the exact point where it should end it. And then it's funny because I'll get in my car and be like, "Oh yeah, that's where I cut off, and that's where I've been singing the whole day." So I'm self-conscious about my dancing, so I'm gonna go sing, I
You're gonna
think.
go sing? Okay.
Yeah.
I think just because when you said Barbie girl, I started so I
And
think
that
I
one's a terrible earworm, and I just did it to everybody that's gonna listen to this podcast. They're gonna be singing that song. But again, the movie has like sparked it because even just the one word Barbie
yes, yes. You
kind of
just
puts
hear
the,
that
the
song.
earworm in your head. Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
Yeah, I think I would be like but I don't forced to dance, but I don't think it would be forced. I would just
Just get
you
going.
know,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
just get going. Yeah, I would definitely it would be that versus sing along, I think, for
Yes.
me. All right, another one, please.
I'm 38, so let's go 38.
38. Do you tend to Google your problems?
Um, yeah, I would say I I've found myself a lot lately getting stuck on a word like a naive. I was trying to spell out naive the other day, or perception, like words like that. And I'm lucky that there is Google, because if imagine trying to find a dictionary now, I just go to Google and I'll write it out, and then when it says naive meaning,
It's like click.
I click on it and I go, uh, and I make sure that it's the word I'm actually trying to write out. So yeah, in a sense, I definitely Google my problem. I think we all do.
Yes.
I went to a big wrestling show a few years back, and I was at the like convention beforehand, and two like pretty well known older wrestlers, they were like, we're having trouble, guys. Like, just talking to me and a couple other fans. They're like, we have to do a whole talk about a match we did in 1983, and we're trying to think of who all the people that were in the match. And I go, well, I was born 85, but I have this magical box here that can give us all the information we need. And the one guy goes, check the magical box, please.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Because I do the same thing. Like yeah, if I'm like, okay, this is the word I want to use, but I'm not sure how to spell it. Like I've typed it out in my document. It's got the red squiggly line. I'm like,
Oh,
okay, or it's not giving me like the because like on your phone you'll type something and it'll put the word
naive
there's
kept coming out as native, and I'm like, no,
yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
talking about
That's not what
native.
I'm trying to say. Exactly. So it wasn't giving me like like the correct option. So I went
Totally.
to Google
Yeah.
and just kind of tried to start spelling it, or I would be like, okay, a word that means this,
Yeah.
and hope I'll get a list of synonyms and find the word that I'm looking
Totally.
for.
Yes.
I've also done the what does it mean if blah blah blah. I
Yeah.
do that too, whether it's symptoms or what emotions. What does it
Totally.
mean when
Yes. I think everyone's Googled symptoms. That was actually a thing on cruise ships that I like joking about, is you'd go to the ship doctor and they would Google your symptoms in front of you. And that's why I was go, they're not real doctors. They're just people who've convinced someone that they have a medical degree. And that's why every conversation you have, well, let's Google it. Let's Google that rash that
yeah,
you have. What does it mean? Okay, it's heat rash. You were out in the sun too much
yeah,
yesterday.
heat
And it's
rash.
like,
That's it.
glad you're putting your doctoral knowledge to test, sir. Thank you.
That's too funny. All right, let's do one more.
What was the total number of questions again? 200 and
I have 249.
let's do 248.
248. Okay. What embarrasses you the most in front of other people?
Not being able to find words, as I've done a couple times on you. Uh, in front of people, I mean, I think at this point, I'm 38. I'm this far into the game. I'm so used to embarrassing myself. It kind of just rolls off my back at this point. But yeah, I would say the my ADD working overtime on me and not allowing me to get out what I want to say, or saying the wrong thing, and people perceiving it as, something
Oh,
different than what I mean, I feel like
oh,
is
I see.
where I'm
Okay.
most self-conscious about, for sure.
Okay.
How
Okay.
about
What
you?
would for me, I think it would be if someone volunteers information about me.
Mm,
Like
yeah,
say you're at a party or you're sitting at a table or something, and someone says, uh oh, like, what do you do for a living or something like that? And if I say, oh, I work as a web developer, and then someone else chimes in with, oh, well, she does this or she does that too, or that sort of thing, like somebody volunteering information that I
especially
haven't.
the
Yeah,
especially the comic thing when you're in a work setting.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
had I'm friends with this guy now, but I remember very early on when people were finding out that I do comedy and I was just kind of getting more and more in film and people were getting to know me. I had like a guy, not my department, but works directly with us. And he goes, "So you're the comic, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do stand-up comedy outside of this." He goes, "Tell me a joke."
oh,
And like
oh,
really the wrong approach to get anyone to tell you anything is,
anything.
tell me this now. And you just
Exactly.
and I think I even thought of it that day. That was the first day I said, okay, my next show is at Comedy Bar at this, and I go, if you want to hear me tell jokes,
Yeah,
pay money and come see
yeah,
me.
exactly, because it doesn't work. This is not how it works.
I've said that directly to people. I go, that's not how this works. Like I'm being paid to put these lights in the air, and you're
Yes.
being paid to make sure that they stay safely in the air. I'm not here to entertain you. And when
Exactly.
guys say that I'm working with, I go, just listen. I say funny things.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot
Yes.
of people who are like, for a comic, you seem very reserved. I go, the moment I'm comfortable with you, and we're not in this thing of I have to get this done immediately and
Yeah.
safely, then
Yes.
I'll hit you with zingers. I'll hit you with zingers all day. But don't like it's not basketball. You don't just throw somebody the ball and go shoot the bat. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
so strange that people think that you can,
Yes.
you being as unfunny as possible in this situation is going to make me want to go like, oh, let's all right,
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Waka
Yeah,
waka. I
yeah,
know.
exactly.
I know, yeah, because yeah, I've been in that situation a number of times where it's just like, oh, I do this, and someone's like, oh, she does stand up, like that, or volunteering like dating information. That's a big one, and
Any
I had
personal
somebody
stuff.
do
Yeah.
that, like personal stuff. You know, that yeah, that really, on top of embarrassing me, that makes me mad because it's like, just
Oh, it
stop, just don't,
throws
like,
everything off. Yeah. It's
yeah,
changes the
exactly.
interaction completely. Yeah.
Right, right. And it's like, unless it comes out of my mouth, do not do not
Don't,
volunteer it for me.
don't
Don't,
volunteer for
yeah,
me.
don't volunteer anything for me unless I actually say it, or I tell you, you can tell them that I do stand up or that.
Even an accomplishment, like even if
Yeah, yeah,
even if like say you bought a house and
yes,
someone like immediately goes like they just bought a house or they just had a baby or they just like, I always feel so like you want to say congratulations to the person,
yes,
but I don't follow up with anything if that's ever said, or
yeah,
they,
yes.
yeah,
I'm
it's
like, oh, okay, but
congratulations or
yeah,
whatever, and then I leave it at that because it's
same.
like how personal is that you're just going
Exactly.
like,
That someone's just volunteered this personal information out
crazy.
like that. Yeah, because it's totally different if someone's like, "Hi, I'm Simone. I just bought a house." That's
And it's,
different.
and yeah, and
Bit weird,
especially,
but different. You know?
well, and it's that person's never your close friend that's giving out that information.
Yes,
It's always a person who you have minimal. That's all they know
yes,
about you. So that's
yes. It's somebody on the periphery of your life. It's
totally
exactly
who
because
you've
your inner
kept at
circle
arm's length.
friend, like
Yeah, exactly.
your people, would
Yeah,
never just volunteer that stuff.
we
It's
should
always
we
somebody
should
on the end.
we should make it like okay for you to turn around to that person and like scold them for like, hey,
Yes,
you don't get to tell personal information about me. I don't tell all of them about how you sleep with
that
socks
just
on or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you don't. It's so crazy that people find that in their mind it's okay to just volunteer
yeah,
information about somebody that they don't know anything about.
yeah, yeah. It's so rude, and yeah, it's so it's embarrassing, and it's weird, and yeah, yeah. Just don't do
Don't do
that.
that.
Don't do that, people. Don't do that, people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was delightful. This was so much fun.
Thank you so
I
much for having me. This is
Yeah,
a great
thank you.
time.
This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that we finally did this. And please come back. I'd love for you to come back
You tell me
anytime.
anytime.
You
Yeah.
know, if you have anything to promote, or whatever it is, or you just want to shoot the shit, please come back.
Absolutely. And please let me know when you're coming back to Toronto because again, if a year in between
I know.
each other face to face is tough. But I
I'll
think
be
that
actually I'll be in Toronto next weekend,
excellent.
actually, for Danforth
Excellent.
Comedy
Excellent.
Festival. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. It would have happened by the time
I was gonna say,
this
yeah,
is
it's
aired,
not next
but
week for everybody watching, but
yeah, it
no,
was a few
great.
weeks ago for everyone
Yeah,
watching right now.
exactly.
But yeah. All right. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, and this was so much fun. I will include I will have your social media contact information in the show notes.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you again, and thank you all for watching. See you next time. Bye.